Welcome, everyone. It is Poddywood yet again, and Poddywood interviews, I will add. As you notice, Steve has not opened the show, and for good reason. We got rid of him this week, mainly because we wanted to bring in a bit of New York culture to the show this week, which obviously you need when you live in Wythenshawe. It's going to be interesting because not only is my co-host this week from New York, but also our guest is as well. But he's not in New York, but I'll get to that in a moment. But as always, I'm Andrew Roger Carson. Thank you very much for joining us on Poddywood. Joining me this week as my co-host, all the way from Bushwick, Brooklyn, of course, it's Jonas Barnes. Jonas, how are you?
I'm good, man. How about you? How's everything going over in the UK?
Oh, it's going terrible. But that's just the UK. We're going to play a bit of a game tonight to see who gets the police sirens in the background first. And I'm betting it's going to be me because you've already had yours before we went on air.
Yeah, we had a bunch over here. Also, it's so hot right now in New York. It's so gross.
So naturally, we wanted to bring a bit of home spirit for you. And we're very fortunate this week that we have, in my view, an amazing New York director. If you have seen fantastic movies such as Catfight, or Applesauce, or The Misogynist, you'll know this name very well. He's very well regarded in the New York independent film scene, and for very good reason. And today, he's joining us from North Carolina, so I don't know if we will get a completely different set of sirens in the background. But it's our absolute pleasure to welcome, as a debut guest here on Poddywood also, it's Onur Tukel. Onur, how are you?
I'm good, Andrew. Thanks for having me on the show. And Jonas, it's good to see you and hear you. Yeah, in North Carolina, you're not going to hear sirens in the background. In Charlotte, you're going to hear church bells, going off every couple of, every hour or so. There's like church bells going on. So I'm in the South. Yeah, I'm in the South. I got out of North Carolina just as out of New York as a vacation or whatnot. So, but it's hot down here too, So it's good to be on the show. Thank you for the nice introduction.
No, definitely. I say we've tried to make this episode work a couple of times, and I think we always got to thank Gino Pesci for the introduction, for forwarding you onto this show. And it's been great because me and Jonas, we have spent probably the last week binging a lot of the work that you have nicely enough sent over to us to research.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I'm going to be curious to know what you all think of all these. So as a filmmaker, I feel like sometimes you feel like it's a betrayal to shit on other people's movies because you know how much goes into it, how much time, how much of your soul at what you're revealing. I mean, you're very exposed. So it's hard to shit on a movie sometimes knowing of what everyone goes through. But at the same time, I feel like the culture has become so lax. We're in this place, which is, let's be nice to everyone culture, which is, let's not shit on anything because, it's going to hurt someone's feelings, And I believe the opposite of that is true with art. You should be brutal when it comes to art criticism, because it's if you have an abject reaction to something or a very strong reaction and you just hate something, you should be able to speak it out. How can you portray what you're portraying on screen and do it in such a jocular fashion, in such a joking way? But then, I don't know, in art, I think anything goes in art. Anything should be allowed in art, and that was kind of my point.
Yes.
Because I feel like there's been this backlash against comedy, and that comedy has become, the last thing that comedy should be is neutered, or that you should be cautious when it comes to comedy. I think there's a way to be conscientious about comedy. I agree with what George Carlin says about not going after the underdog, although I do that sometimes too. But it's a big subject, freedom of speech, especially when it comes to art. And I think for me, I've always had a big mouth. And when someone says you can't say something, I'm always the asshole in the classroom that's saying it. I'm saying it just because I'm not allowed to,
I was gonna say, Andrew, you brought me on with a perfect guest because me and him are right on the same wavelength there.
I knew this was going to be a great one to break you in with, Jonas. Okay, in looking back, obviously your first movie, as far back as I can go, and I can't find it anywhere, unfortunately, was a movie called House of Pancakes. This was back in 1997, so you kind of really got your start really small and independently.
Yeah, I graduated college in '95, and there was a new wave of independent film. There was a new wave movement in the late '80s and early '90s. I don't know if it started with Jim Jarmusch and Spike Lee, but as far as I know, those were the kind of the filmmakers in New York that had started this kind of new wave movement that kind of introduced a bunch of independent filmmakers that were making low budget movies on 16 millimeter in the early '90s. And Richard Linklater would be part of that. You know, it would be obviously Robert Rodriguez making El Mariachi for $7,000, ended up selling it to Miramax and going to Sundance and making, you know, everybody knew about that movie at the time it came out. You know, everybody for the young independent filmmaker, it was like, wow, you can make a feature film for $7,000. I don't know, I guess it was the punk rock of film. There was the Hollywood film, and then there was the low budget independent film that I would go to see religiously and go rent movies from. And those are the movies I wanted to make. I wanted to be Neil LaBute. I wanted to be Kevin Smith, of course, with Clerks. So when I graduated from college, I saved up money. I worked all summer. I saved up about $4,000 or $5,000. Again, this is privilege. I came from a place of privilege. So my dad, I think, ended up giving me like $5,000 for when I graduated, just as a gift. And then my friend Clifford put in about $3,000. So I made my first feature film, House of Pancakes, on black and white, 16 millimeter reversal. And we kind of took the same format as like Clerks, which is that movie takes place basically in one setting, and we made House of Pancakes in one setting, which was a house. And it was basically, the idea was two people enjoying their first date, their first date. And as they're having their date, all these weird people come knocking on the doors, and roommates keep coming home, even though they're supposed to have the house by themselves. And it's this hodgepodge of weirdos who come in and out of the house. So by the end, everything kind of culminates into this frenzied, kind of cataclysmic, absurdist kind of finale. So I was just, you know, I wanted to make movies, and that was my first attempt at doing it. And I made it in Wilmington, North Carolina, where there was a lot of films being made, not necessarily independent films, but there was a studio there. Dino De Laurentiis had a studio there, and he was making films there. So I went to Wilmington to be part of that, but I never actually worked on any movies that the studios were doing. I kind of just made my own thing and used some of the crew members who were making films there. Blue Velvet was shot in Wilmington in the late 80s, right before I got there. Shit. You know, when I got there, I cut my teeth and learned how to make movies on 16 millimeter, you know, and then my third movie, Ding-a-Lingos, was made on 35. So yeah, House of Pancakes eventually got released by a small company in New Jersey called EI Cinema. A guy named Michael Rasso saw the movie. I sent it to him, and they released it. And I remember getting a box of VHS tapes with the cover, you know, with the nice shrink wrap VHS tapes, feeling like I made it because I have a box of VHS tapes. I remember it never got into Blockbuster, but I would get phone calls from people who were seeing the movie pop up at like video stores. Hollywood Video. There was Hollywood Video, which was a competitor.
Video, yeah.
Do you remember that, Jonas?
Oh,
Do you remember that? Yeah. But the problem was I had bad sound, bad audio. So, you know, so I mean, it's good enough. But still not great. But it's the kind of thing I thought about transferring the film footage back to 4K or 2K if I could ever get enough money raised or save enough money. Or I'm just cheap. I don't know if I don't know if I'd want to spend $10,000 retransferring that film, although I love it a lot. But I have a lot of love for it. I remember we had a screening in Wilmington, North Carolina. It was hugely packed. We didn't get into the local film festival, right? And I was really pissed off because I'm like, we made a feature film. We should be playing at the local Cucalores Film Festival, which is a great festival, by the way. So we had our own screening, and I remember it being very vindicating because hundreds of people showed up for this tiny little movie, you know, in a small town. I have so much love and admiration, and I was such a different person then. I was naive, and I was excited, and I was optimistic. And I guess you still have to be those things to make independent film, you know? You still have to be reckless and a little bit, you have to be kind of a child, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
From following on from House of Pancakes, you make, I think, you've one of your first forays into horror was a movie called Drawing Blood, which I believe you stated in an interview. I think I read that this was the only time that you really made money.
Yeah. The only time was the first. It was. Well, I've made money. I've either recouped money or made money on 3 movies, and Drawing Blood was the first one. When House of Pancakes was released, EI Cinema, if you look up EI Cinema, I don't know if they're still around, they were releasing all these really, really cheap, exotic female vampire movies, right?
Yes.
And he told me, he's like, look, you want to make money, make one of these things. Make like a cheap, and they were pretty bad, and they were kind of like soft. They weren't softcore porn. It was just a lot of topless women with fangs dancing around and being silly. And I'm like, well, I know I don't want to make that kind of movie, but female vampires, that sounds fun. I'd like to maybe make an artsy vampire film that has some nudity, but justified nudity, not just like, exploitative nudity, right? So I came up with an idea for something called Danny Cleveland. This is so like not PC and so like now I am embarrassed about this. It's called Danny Cleveland Lesbian Vampire Hunter. That's the name of the movie. I thought of this in like 1995 or 96. It was right after I made House of Pancakes in 96. It came out in 97. So this is around 1997. And I wrote an 8-page proposal to try to make this movie Danny Cleveland Lesbian Vampire Hunter, about a guy who kills lesbian vampires, because a lot of the things with EI Cinema, they were lesbian vampires making out with each other. They were topless. I mean, it was schlocky. It was not the movies were fine. They were harmless. They weren't pornographic. They were harmless,
And
but
then later in the 2000s, you get James Corden in a movie called Lesbian Vampire Killers.
Oh yeah. Years later, some of the lesbian vampire killer movies came out, and I'm sure they were made before. I think there was who was the guy who did there was the Rosemary's Baby. Jesus Christ!
Have we completely all blanked on his name?
Yeah, that happens. That happens all the time now.
Polanski. For some reason.
Polanski. So Polanski made a movie,
Weird.
a vampire comedy.
Forget that guy.
so he made a vampire film in the '60s with Sharon Tate, I believe. The Fearless Vampire Hunters.
Yes.
And it was also known as, excuse me, but your teeth are stuck in my neck, right? So I never saw that movie, but like the idea of an absurdist vampire movie was funny to me. But bottom line is, he said, make a movie like that. Make a movie like that. I put an 8-page proposal together. My brother Timmer, whose house I'm in right now, my older brother, he was older. He's older than me by 4.5 years, and he had some friends who had some money that worked in the furniture in North Carolina. The furniture industry was much bigger 20 years ago than it is now. So he had some friends who worked in furniture. I sent them this proposal saying, we can make a movie called Danny Cleveland Lesbian Vampire Hunter for $12,000 on 16mm film. This is how we do it. And I had a top sheet of the budget and what we would do. All the money going towards film and processing, a little bit of money for fangs and blood, but not much else, right? And incredibly, and I faxed it to them. That was at the time of faxes, right? So I sent them the fax, and they called me back and said, we'll fund this. This sounds amazing. This sounds funny. So 5 of these guys put in one investor put in like $7,000. The other investors put in $1,000 each. We had $12,000. I eventually rewrote the script, made it Drawing Blood, Sergio Lapel's Drawing Blood. It's about a female vampire. Instead of being hunted, I said, I didn't want to make a movie about female lesbian vampires being hunted. I wanted to make it about a kick-ass vampire named Diana who paints nude models in blood. So I wanted to justify the nudity by having her, because if I showed a woman naked and she's being painted, that's not exploitative. That's art. That's like life drawing, right? So that's the idea. And then she has this Renfeld type character that she holds hostage, and he basically has to go bring her victims where she's going to kill his father. And I shot 16mm, had a blast doing it. We shot over 6 months. We shot on a CP16. Ended up selling. I got a lot of offers from small distributors who wanted to buy it, but only Troma, Troma, everyone's familiar with Troma, only they would actually give us an MG, minimum guarantee, actual money to buy the movie outright. And I was stupid. I didn't even negotiate. They said, we'll give you $15K. I said, sold. We got it. We got our money back. But I could have probably gotten more for it, Drawing Blood I have a lot of love for that movie because it's it's got a strong female vampire character who's extremely strong, and she basically is in love with this character Edmund, who doesn't want to be with her, and she wants to turn him into a vampire so that she can be with him for eternity. But he doesn't want to do that because the thought of being with anybody for eternity is horrible. I would find out later. I would recycle this kind of idea for Summer of Blood later, the vampire comedy I would make later. You know what I mean? Like there's a little bit of ideas from that I would take later. But yeah, the first half of the movie is kind of very dramatic and very serious, and then it takes a very comedic turn and becomes very, very funny and really absurd. Some people love that aspect about the movie. Some people think it's ridiculous and like inconsistent. I've always had a problem with tone in my movies. The tone is all over the place, you know?
Yeah, we've got to see into kind of Summer of Blood here as we're moving on, because I think that is a natural kind of progression. I know we're going to jump back and forwards a little bit, but this had one scene that really caught me by surprise and off guard, and I was laughing so hard that I couldn't finish the drink that was in my mouth, and it just went everywhere. And it was all I've got to say for the people who haven't seen it, and hopefully we'll get a clip in here, all I can say is, can you sign?
Jesus Christ. I thought I was having a bad night. You're in bad shape there. You need some help? Can you tell me what you need? What can I do for you? I think your vocal cords have been maybe ripped out or something like that. You can't speak, you know? Can you do sign language? Can you sign what you need for me? Use sign language? You do know sign language. Wow. I don't know sign language, so I can't help you.
Oh, yeah. Some people thought that scene was a little bit... It showed my character was too detached, too obtuse, just too cynical, and they had a hard time connecting with him. They're like, they suggested that I cut that out because they're like, maybe show him for a little bit, but don't go on and on because it shows that your character is completely untethered to any humanity. He's so out of it, like he's not even just to talk to a guy. And then of course I get blood on my hands. I make the AIDS joke, and then I ask about the tampons. I think that stuff's. I thought it was funny 10 years ago. I don't know if it'd be funny now, but actually that's not true. I watched it a year ago because I did a commentary for a Blu-ray, and I thought the movie was even funnier because we're in this place of inappropriateness. You're not supposed to make that kind of humor today, but I think. You know, with all of my humor, it's showing the buffoonery of this guy. It's not making fun of other people. It's making fun of myself. I'm making fun of my own detachment, my own entitlement, my own fear of death, fear of commitment, fear of everything. So in order to be less afraid of things and actually acknowledge the fact that, hey, I'm afraid of this stuff, let me mock everything. And I think Summer of Blood is a perfect example of that. At the end of that scene, what's supposed to happen is they actually take a selfie with the guy after he's dead. They take a selfie of themselves, and we didn't include that in the cut because that was way too, I think, flippant or cheerfully disrespectful to someone who just died, you know. But oh man, Summer of Blood changed my life. That it got into the Tribeca Film Festival. We were kind of the talk of the town in 2014, the week that it came out. It led to me making a couple of movies with MPI Media Group, Applesauce, and Catfight. It was a really, really good three years. I had moved to New York in 2011, 2010, just to make movies up there because I wasn't happy in North Carolina. And I, for about 3 or 4 years there, I was really thriving and having a really good time. Summer of Blood didn't make a lot of money. We made it for about $35,000, and MPI Media Group gave us $75,000 for it, and which was not bad. And we got the investors. I was one of the investors. My friend Clifford, who put in money for House and Pancakes, was the other investor. We recouped our money and then used the profits to pay everybody, you know, a little bit of money that wasn't bad, you know, for somebody who worked on the movie for 3 or 4 days. They acted in the movie. We gave them a check for $1,600, and so we didn't make any money, but we paid everybody back, and it was just beautiful, man. I felt it was just an exciting time.
Before we jump into Catfight, I want to ask you something about like the filmmaking process in New York, because first off, the fact that you made Summer of Blood for, you said $35K, that's fucking crazy. There's no way. Like watching that movie, there's no way I would have thought it was that low. But so you definitely did a damn good job with that budget.
Yeah, definitely.
In New York, especially for independent film, you kind of have to do some guerrilla filmmaking tactics.
Yeah.
Like, is that something you have run into with any New York filming at all?
Oh man, well, God, there's so many things to say about that. Let me see if I can go through it in order. First of all, thanks for saying that Summer of Blood looked like it cost a lot more than $35,000. When I was in France, I showed Summer of Blood at the Champs-Élysées Film Festival, and one of the French, of course, notorious for being so blunt and curt, which I love. They're like, how? If somebody in the audience said, "How much did the movie cost?" I said, "It cost like $35K." I'm very proud of how low budget it was. And one guy was like, "It looks like it cost $5K." I'm like, he was just so such an asshole. And I was just like, well, I guess so. I guess compared to the French movies, maybe it doesn't look, it looks pretty cheap. The guerrilla aspect, that's one of the reasons I came to New York to make movies, was when these the cameras came out, because we shot Summer of Blood on 2 Canon 5Ds, which were like $3,000, $4,000 cameras, and we rented them really cheap, and we shot them, you can just hold them, they're like little still cameras, and it was just easy and mobile to shoot on the streets of New York, and you could shoot with a crew of 7 or 8 people, and it was easy to get around. You didn't have to get permits. In fact, one night, late at night, we're shooting on the streets of New York. I've got my fangs in, I've got my shirts covered in blood, and a cop pulls by and stops, and we've got like 7 or 8 people on the street. And I'm thinking the police officer's going to say, "Hey, you guys need to shut it down and leave, or show us your permit." I'm like, "Officer, is everything okay?" And he just looks at me and he smiles. And he says, "You look awesome, man." And he drives away. I remember hearing about Lost in Translation, which was the Sofia Coppola movie that was made in Japan with Scarlett Johansson and Bill Murray. There's that final shot, supposedly, when they're on the street and he whispers in her ear. Supposedly, if I remember correctly, they just went out there and shot it with one camera, and like I said, so it's like, and they got all those extras walking by, and I think that's the beautiful thing about New York, which I find so inspiring, is you're on the streets. It's $10 million production design, in New York City. I mean, that's the thing about any city, not any city, but New York has a specific look that looks incredible. I mean, you can tell when someone is trying to make a movie that's doubling for New York, but it's not New York. They're shooting in Montreal, they're shooting in London. London, it does not look like New York. New York does not look like London. I mean, New York just has such a very specific look. Friday the 13th Part 8, which I saw opening night when I was in high school. I mean, I had been to New York a couple of times, but I didn't know the damn difference, and I still loved it. I just loved Jason being in Manhattan, even though he wasn't in Manhattan, even though the last 30 minutes, he was only in Manhattan for like 30 minutes, and they didn't take advantage of what they really could have done with it. I still appreciated it. Yes, guerrilla style New York, low budget films. I would love to make higher budgeted movies. 2 million, 5 million, 10 million. Obviously, you have to work for that. You have to have patience. I've been trying to get movies made for millions of dollars for years. Maybe that'll happen, maybe they won't. But the beautiful thing about making a film for $20,000 to $100,000 is, if people are investing in those movies, and I always ask the investors, look, you can afford to lose this money, right? And you're not going to be broke, and it's not going to kill you. You're investing because you want to be part of something really, really cool. And all the investors are like, yes, let's do this. It's fun. I like your body of work. We think you're going to have success at some point. They're wrong, but they're still investing, and it's fun because there's not a lot on the line. If obviously you want to get the movie made and you want it to be good, but it takes the stress out of it. So you're having fun. It's more fun, you know what I mean? Like, and that to me is what it's all about, enjoying the process and having a good time. It's still stressful sometimes, and sometimes it can be horrible experience, which I've had on movies before, but just being on the streets of New York, again, that is why I came there, and that's why it's been such a beautiful 12 years. But at the end of the day, if you enjoy the process and people are coming together to help you help you make the film, to act in the film, it's not about money. It's about the experience of making art together. I don't know. As long as people will still be part of that adventure with me, I love it. I love it so much, and it's infectious. I tell this to first-time filmmakers because I just produced a movie with a first-time filmmaker. You're about to get a virus, an addiction to something that is a beautiful addiction. It's heartbreaking and it will kill you. It will kill you in a lot of ways, but And there's nothing more inspiring than making a movie. Of course, there's heartbreak and disappointment that comes with it, but the rewards of seeing it come together are just so magical and beautiful.
And I just want to say, I just won the siren twice. I've had 2 police cars pass during that.
I was going to say, I would love to be addicted to making movies compared to whiskey and cocaine like I used to be addicted to. The payoff for being addicted to filmmaking is way better.
Well, there is a great saying that I saw on the internet today that I thought, I'm going to bring this up, and I wish I could remember who it was that quoted it. They said, there are 2 different tones of a New York independent movie. One is 2 Ninas, and the other is applesauce. It showed me there was a bit of where your influences were. I mean, you get labeled with the Woody Allen shtick quite a lot, because I don't think most critics know any other New York filmmakers.
Well, yeah, so you make a comedy about neurotic people in New York. You know, you got the Seinfeld comparison, the Woody Allen, which I don't mind at all. I don't have a problem with at all. You know, yeah. You know, it's funny, when I was making the movie, I wasn't thinking about this idea that to me is so omnipresent now, which is being haunted by your past and something from your past coming back and haunting you and cancel. Right now, but we're talking about cancel culture, no, right? Anything you may have said, or any photo you may have posted, or any way you may have mistreated someone or yelled at someone or done something, coming back and them outing you and getting you canceled, maybe behind the scenes or out, you know, publicly on Twitter or social media. I didn't think about that when I was making the movie, but I feel like the movie maybe speaks to some of that stuff, because it's about people opening the Pandora's box of, well, it's really about at the end of the day, how much do you want to know about your spouse? You know what I mean? Do you really want to know about the life they lived before you got involved with them, and how opening that Pandora's box can create a lot of grief, right? So you know, the whole movie really started based on something that happened to a dear friend of mine in college, where he did accidentally, that story that I tell, my character tells, about cutting someone's finger off, that actually happened to my friend in college. The way I tell the story is almost exactly the way my friend tells the story. He's been telling that story for 20 years. I called him. I said, can I make a movie based on that thing that happened to you? Can I use that as like the linchpin or the catalyst for this film? And he was like, sure, just don't say my name and never say my name. He actually confessed the story on a talk radio show. He actually confessed what happened. I wanted to be, it was very scripted, but I really wanted it to be loose, because mumblecore, you know, the mumblecore movement in 2000, basically 2005 to 2000, whenever it ended, 2015. I wanted to have that feel. I wanted to seem scripted. I wanted to have a very loose mumblecore feel. Also, Husbands and Wives and Hannah and Your Sisters, all of Woody Allen, like just loose and real. And I have a lot of love for that movie, and I appreciate it for MPI for funding it. I mean, it cost about $75K to make. Made no money, nobody saw it, but you know, they did their best trying to get it out there. And
I think it's a film that's going to get kind of rediscovered, and I think it is a movie that people, especially today, should see. I mean, as we kind of mentioned, you know, we're all getting so desensitized, and almost people are scared to kind of make stories like this because they feel no one are going to see them, or you know, they're not going to get the opportunities to make movies because they've stepped over this imaginary line that's been drawn. But this is the one great thing about the humor of your movies. It's like, what line?
Like this movie, Applesauce, I legitimately did not think that I was going to like, based off just looking at the cover and looking at what the type of movie it was, because it's usually not down my alley of what I enjoy in movies. And then I watched the movie, and I was like, holy shit, I actually like this a lot. Like, and it was a lot of that, honestly, is credit to you for being really, really good at character development, and really good with dialogue, and really good with scene setting.
If you do not laugh at the scene when your character is confronted outside the school by Max Casella, and just the fantastic delivery of like, I know Sicilians and shit.
Max Casella's really, really, really funny.
It's the flinching punches that he goes for you that he even knocks his own glasses off.
He's amazing. You know, we have the benefit of shooting 2 cameras, you know, so you can really catch the kind of spontaneity and the kind of the naturalism of the performances, you know what I mean? What I really love about Applesauce, it's about 4 core characters, and I do like the characters, and I think they are well-rounded, and I think there's a nice, funny little mystery that's happening that's basically solved. The mystery is solved in the first 10 minutes of the movie, you know what I mean? Like, you see who the character is. I'm not giving spoilers away. And then he's revealed halfway through. So it's not really a mystery at all. It's just a comedy of absurd situations about knowledge that you shouldn't have had. That's the idea of the applesauce. The apple is like the tree of knowledge. You know, you bite into the tree of knowledge, you bite into the apple of knowledge, and then what happens? You know what I mean? Like, you have to live with knowing about something you don't want to know. And this movie played very well at festivals. Like, when we played it at festivals, big crowds, electric crowds, everyone laughing collectively. Like, this is definitely a crowd-pleasing movie with people. And people that watch it by themselves always tell me they laugh out loud, and they've said similar things, Andrew, like spitting up their drink. You were saying that about The Summer of Blood, but spitting up like their drink or laughing so hard they can't control it. That's what you look for in comedy. For me, when I watch a comedy, if it makes me laugh out loud 3 or 4 times, that comedy wins me over. And I don't necessarily have to laugh throughout a comedy. I have to be engaged. I have to be interested. But if I laugh out loud 3 or 4 times, I think, you know, to me, that's what makes a comedy work. I think, obviously, there's the Chinese food scene that's very, very funny. That's the one that I think really brings it's a showstopper. Like, people will be laughing for 3 or 4 minutes, not 3 or 4 minutes, but for a long time in an audience. I remember watching it, just laughter for a long time after it because it's so absurd. And the asshole as a comedic device has always been funny. I mean, I think about, I don't know if it's necessarily funny now, but Alec Baldwin and Glenn Ross, which we watched religiously in the 90s, that scene, he's such a dick. It's fucking funny. And look, it's like, the culture is like, we can't be cruel to people. You're not supposed to. No, you shouldn't be cruel to people. Doesn't mean it's not funny.
Yeah, like you can't take away something that the world doesn't have and shy away from it. Like, if you're making art, if you're doing something like film or script writing or character development, like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't be cruel, but I'm sorry, cruelty is out there, and some of that cruelty is funny as hell. Like, that's just the nature of what it is.
100%. And the world's a dangerous place anyway. There's danger everywhere. So how is someone just being an asshole a real threat, existential threat to anything? If someone's an asshole, you're an asshole back. That's how it goes. Nobody owes. No one. You're not entitled to people being courteous to you. That's just not a right. You don't have a right to that. So this idea that assholes all of a sudden are like persona non grata, people are grumpy. People are unhappy in their lives. People are annoyed in their lives. That's part of it. It is truthful. That's the way we exist. Even if it's not, and I forget this idea that, because there's racism in my new movie, right? Because in Poundcake, you hear Asian people being racist towards black people and vice versa. You see them arguing. And you don't see that a lot in movies. And that's, racism is real. So you're not supposed to put racism in movies now? Because I had a review saying, I don't mind bad reviews, rip my movies apart, that's fine. But someone was critiquing it because it had a racist Asian character. That's the reason to critique the movie? Because there's an racist Asian character? So racism doesn't exist? Asians are completely, like, exonerated from racism? It's absurd to me. But I gotta say also, what I love about Applesauce was the first time I got to kind of work with Max Casella, who's an amazing actor, and what a pedigree of work he's done. When I was in high school, I used to watch Doogie Howser, which was a popular TV show in the 80s. And Max was on that show, and I gotta say, I fanboyed out when I met him because I'm like, I love that show so much. So we've become good friends, and my hope is to do. If I'm lucky enough to do 5, 10, 20 more movies, I hope I can do 5, 10, or 20 more movies with Max. I love him so much. But Max Casella did say something really interesting to me. He was like, Onur, yeah, you're a fine actor, but you're a great writer. And if you have a chance to make these movies, why not cast somebody, a real actor, a big actor in your part? It will make the movie more viable, more lucrative. And also, it was his way of saying, and he's so right, listen, I'm Max Casella. I should be acting with someone else like Kevin Corrigan or somebody with more clout or more experience than you. And he was right. He didn't mean it in any disrespect, but I've listened to him on that. And I'm acting in my new movie, Poundcake, only because it's a non-SAG movie. We didn't have the money to hire SAG actors to get approved by SAG, and also to go through all the COVID protocols a year and a half ago when we shot it. But so that's why I cast myself in it. But in the future, when I cast Max Casella and other SAG actors, yeah, I'll find somebody else to play. Max will probably play the role that I would play myself, or Kevin Corrigan or Craig Bierko or whoever will be generous enough to act in my movies,
There's something to be said about not being in the system, so to speak, because like what we've talked about this whole time about with independent film and with, what you can do on this budget and that budget and all those things, and not being in that Hollywood system, allowing you to take more risks and everything. That's how you get a movie like Terrifier 2. Because
exactly.
Like Terrifier 2 was made for $250,000, which when you see the movie, you're like, there's no way that was made for $250,000. But also, like, not to go off on anything on this, but just to give an example of it, the amount of cruelty that is in that movie, like in the kill scenes and stuff, is something that a Hollywood studio would never touch. Like, it makes like Evil Dead Rise look like the Care Bears.
Yeah. But also, I think in the first one too, doesn't he hang up a woman and saw her in half vertically? Yeah. Now, okay, imagine if someone said, "Well, you can't do that because my friend died and someone stabbed her and killed her." Of course, which is terrible and horrible. Right. But imagine the same idea. Like, I'm offended because I have someone close to me who died. Not like that, but it was terrible. And it's like you can't imagine like the outrage. Like, you're not allowed to do that, which is okay. You go to a comedy club knowing that people are going to say things that are offensive or inappropriate or that are just something you've never heard before, a new take on a joke you've never heard before. And why is that like allowed to be able to say, you can't say that because it offends me? How is someone being sawed in half not offensive? Everybody's offended by something. Everything is grotesque, but we go looking for catharsis. We're looking for something we've never seen before. And again, it's the way of escaping the dread or of the world that we're living in, knowing that we could die at any moment, knowing that nuclear bombs could drop at any moment, knowing that anything could happen. It's some kind of catharsis, the feeling of safety of saying, look, the world is absurd, it's violent, it's nasty, but I feel almost reassured as I'm watching this that this isn't real. Yeah, thank God Terrifier 2 exists. And, some people could poo-poo it and say, well, a $250,000 movie, when's the last time a $250,000 independent film was released independently and made $10 million in a theater? Some people might say, well, that's the only way an independent film could get released these days. And what is that saying about the current culture? And what is that saying? That independent films should only make hyper, ultra violent movies? You could take that line too, but it's like, what? Look, make an interesting movie, get it out there. I feel like people should put movies in theaters and they should never go to streaming. We should go back to like 80s, just Blu-ray and theater. And maybe 2 years down the road or a year down the road, and if you can get a bunch of people to be loyal and not have assholes leak it online, give it something. It's like seeing a band that you really love that only gets to play from city to city. I don't know. I mean, there are alternatives to this. You know what I mean? Like building a mystique that's not based on, hey, let's just dump it on streaming when anybody can watch it or turn it off and they're not even paying for it, so they have no investment in it. Build the mystique in the theater again. I don't know. An independent film in theaters, Terrifier 2, what a great success story.
By no means should you tell somebody that they can't make that. Like, that's bullshit. Like, you can't tell somebody you don't get to make that art because that art pisses me off. Like, sorry, that's not how it works.
Well, you can't you can't go to the theater and see Terrifier 2 and complain about it being too violent. This was too violent for me. What? I didn't pay for this. Yes, you did. You should have known. You can't go into a comedy club and then be offended because anything goes in a comedy club. I will say this. I watched Three Amigos a couple of weeks ago again, just as comfort food. You remember that movie from the late 80s? And I thought, I haven't watched this in a while. Let me watch this. And it was perfection. And I laughed and laughed and laughed. And it's such clean humor. You know what I mean? I gotta say that I'm like, wow. Now, what a challenge that would be to make something funny like that. That is like not trying to be offensive. That it's just purely absurd. It's almost got like some Buster Keaton. It's very physical. It's very silly. It's very vaudevillian. And I don't know. I think that would be a good, interesting challenge to do too. But also, again, we've to advance so far with horror films and ultra violent horror films. You got to keep pushing the envelope and seeing how far you can go with it, and there's an audience for it. So,
well, speaking of violence, we've kind of got into a film that really kind of put you on the map a bit in the eyes of quite a few, and that, of course, would be Catfight. Yeah. Now, me and Jonas, we got into a bit of a discussion in regards to Anne Heche, because we were talking about obviously how quick people were to turn on Anne Heche while she was dying. But Catfight kind of came at a really good time, because this was, for many, the first time people had seen Anne Heche in a while in leading a movie. Also, you had Sandra Oh, who had right at that time hit it big with her series Killing Eve, which I believe was just shortly after. And it touches on one of my favorite movies of all time, and that's The Duelists. So tell us the story behind Catfight and Anne and Sandra.
Real quickly, the idea came about, I was having drinks and smoking. We were smoking cigarettes and listening to vinyl records with my friend DeVoe Yates, who was my roommate at the time. He's he does music supervising for the Rough House gang out in Charleston, North Carolina. The David Gordon Green and Danny McBride. He's a music supervisor for those guys. He works on the shows out there, Righteous Gemstones, and does the music supervising for the Halloween movies and the new Exorcist movies. He's a wonderful, brilliant, beautiful human being. And we were drinking one night. We were talking about how much we loved the movie 3 O'Clock High. I don't know if you've ever seen this movie. Underrated, brilliant comedy from the 80s. I haven't seen it in a long time. Casey Siemaszko is the actor, a bunch of other actors, no-name actors, but great comedy. The bully, this bully challenges a nerd to a fight. They have to fight at 3 o'clock at the high school, and so we got 70 minutes. The first 2 acts of the movie, the nerd is just trying to get out of this fight because he doesn't want to fight the bully, and so we have all this anticipation, a lot of comedy, a lot of hijinks, a lot of brilliant, just funny, absurd situations. Very, very entertaining and very, very stylistic. We talked about how much we love this movie, and why do we love it so much? Because the anticipation of the final fight, and because we what's going to happen. There's so much suspense. There's so much anticipation. So we kept thinking about that, and then somebody thought of the idea Catfight. What if we make a movie with 2 women fighting called Catfight? And it was like a light bulb went off our heads. IMDb, is there a movie called Catfight? How is there not a movie called Catfight? Let's make a movie called Catfight. This was probably in 2012 or 13 or so. We'd made a movie called Richard's Wedding together. We wrote a script together called Catfight, but it was about women in an advertising company. There were 2 sets of women, young women in their 20s, all competing for. 2 women were fighting over the same guy. The one girl was dating this guy. A girl from a competing advertising agency is sleeping with the guy, and they end up having fisticuffs at the end of the movie. It's about, you know the Bechdel test is, right? Completely fails the Bechdel test. Everything is in relation to this guy. Both women, their happiness is all contingent on this guy winning this guy's love. We wrote it. MPI, they ended up funding, buying Summer of Blood, funding Applesauce. They said, "What else do you want to do?" I was like, "Well, I've got this script called, Catfight that my friend and I wrote, and they're like, yeah, if you want to make this, we can make this." And I read it, and I didn't connect to it at all. I don't know if it was the culture or whatever. I was getting older, but I didn't want to make it about young women fighting over a guy. I wanted to make it about older women fighting, blaming the other woman for the loss of a child. Because both women, there's the idea of childbirth and blaming the other one for the other person's, blaming the death of their child on the other person. To me, felt like that's a way more noble thing to fight for. What can a woman do that a man can't do? Give birth, right? So I wanted women to fight over the worst loss you could imagine. And to me, the worst loss you could imagine is losing a child. Anyway, I wrote the script, Catfight, gave it to MPI. media group and said, I want to make this version. They read the script. They're like, Warner, this is nothing like the other Catfight script that I read, that we read. You sure you want to make this? I'm like, yeah, this is the one I want to make. They said, well, if you can get a good cast, we'll fund the movie. So they gave me a little bit of seed money. They gave me like $10,000. I hired a casting director named Stephanie Holbrook in New York. I never forget it. We had dinner together. She read the script. I took her to lunch, not dinner. I took her to lunch. I was like, I've got a little bit of money. Can you help me cast this thing? If I cast it, we can get the movie made. She said, I'm on board. And then my producer, Gigi Graff, who's brilliant, she came on board the movie, and we got the script to an agency called UTA, and an agent out there read the script. We started going after everybody we could think of. That Parker Posey, Maria Bellos, Sarah Silverman. A bunch of people that I wanted to get to act in the movie that I thought would be great, paired against each other. And you know how it is when you're submitting to agents and managers. That's the funny thing about Mark Ruffalo saying, let's all do independent films, because the agents and managers are like, no, we don't want to read those scripts. We don't want to entertain these offers. People are sending us scripts they can't pay you, Mark. I'm not going to read the script. Someone's going to offer you a script. They're not going to pay you any money. I'm not going to read the script. And so it was laborious. We'd send the script out, wait for Sarah Silverman's people to get back to us. In 2 or 3 weeks, they get back to us saying she's not going to do it. They probably never even sent her the script. I don't know. Who knows? But waiting, and eventually it's like, this isn't working. We need to get this movie cast. So I think her name is Jo Yao at UTA. We said, Joe, can you let us know can you send this script out and let the actors come back to us and see who wants to do it? And we had 5 actresses read the script and come back to us. And 3 of the actors were Anne Heche, Sandra Oh, and Alicia Silverstone. They all wanted to play the same role. They wanted to play Veronica. They wanted to play the Sandra Oh character. You know, the trophy wife who drinks too much wine and who's unhappy. And, you know, that's who they all wanted to play. But I talked to Sandra first on Zoom. We had a conversation. And, it's funny because she had done Grey's Anatomy, right? It was a very popular TV show. She was making a lot of money. And that show was over. And she had not really been in much for a few years after Grey's Anatomy. I told MPI Media Group, they're like, great, that's awesome. And then when you have Sandra Oh attached, then Anne Heche is like, I get a chance, I'll act with Sandra Oh. Sure, I'll do the movie and I'll play the other character. Alicia was awesome and amazing. I remember our lunch together. She wanted to play either role. She wanted to play Sandra's role, and I'm like, Alicia, this role is for, like, you still look, to me, Alicia still looks like the same actress from Clueless. She still has a youthfulness to her. I didn't buy her as the age of the woman I wanted to play the role. And also I cast Anne and Sandra. They came first, and I'm like, Alicia, will you play Anne Heche's lover, her partner? And she's like, okay, I'll do this. But I want you to, she didn't like the way her character was written on the page. She said, I'll do this, Warner. She's awesome. She's like, I want more to do. You don't have enough for me to do in this fucking movie. and I went and I wrote some other scenes for her, and I think they're some of the best scenes in the movie. And then she came and shot with us for 3 days, and we shot the movie in 15 days. And it was a beautiful, beautiful experience. Anne and I really, really connected and really clicked. I wish the plan was to make more movies with her, but I just didn't get a chance to do that. Alicia and I really clicked. I talked to her, and I was in LA about a year ago, and we took a walk on the beach for 2 hours, and we cleaned up trash. We picked up trash on the beach. It was like, so the only way I could walk with her on the beach is if I was actually a trash man. So I said, I'll take it. Sandra was cast in Killing Eve after Catfight came out. Catfight went to Toronto Film Festival in 2017. 2016. We sold it 24 hours after it premiered. We sold it to Netflix for quite a bit of money. We weren't allowed to issue a press release announcing how much we sold it for, but it was very, very successful. Everybody did very, very well. We did well. Like, it came out, people saw it. It probably has more cultural relevance now, 6-7 years after it came out than it did then, just because of this notion of women being powerful, women, and this reversal of like gender in movies, like a character that could go to a man being played by a woman, and you've got 2 women who are basically in the male roles beating the shit out of each other that you normally see men doing. I'm not saying I created the cat fight. Obviously, didn't invent the cat fight. Cat fights have been around for decades, in cinema. But it was fun to make a movie and be able to use that title, to take ownership of that title and say, this is our movie called Cat Fight. We're the first one. And to get these powerhouse performances from Sandra and Anne, and Alicia, they really, really gave it so much. And that's one of the cool things I learned about from Hollywood is you can cast one good actor that has a lot of respect and that people want to work with. You could get the other actors attached, you know what I mean? So I'm proud that we made it. It should have put me on the map in a way that I could have parlayed that into getting meetings set up in Hollywood, trying to get an agent, trying to get a manager. But I kind of rebelled against that stuff. I remember a week or so before we went to Toronto, getting an email from someone at William & Morris saying, hey, we'd like to see the movie and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, you have to go see the movie when you're in Toronto. And after the movie, hey, let's get together and have some lines of cocaine and party our asses off. I was making silly comments, almost to sabotage in a way, because I'm like, I just don't trust it or buy it, you know. I have so many friends. I've got friends who are William & Morris and been pitching shows and getting shows in development. They never get made. They get paid a little bit of money, sure, but it's like, I don't know. I was just more interested in like getting my movies made on my own terms, you know. And I'd love to get another $350,000 movie made, but I don't know. And you know, I've had one movie that had that kind of a budget. We had some kind of, you know, recognizable actors in it, and we sold it for a lot of money. I should have tried to be a little bit more aggressive about getting another project off the ground, but I don't know what it is. I'm an idiot, you know. I just like to do my own thing at my own pace, and whatever I'm inspired to do, I do. And I can't really, if there is an agenda or something strategic about it, or that's motivated by money, or that I know eventually it's going to be a group of people telling me how to make it, I'm not motivated by that, you know.
Cat Fight, I think, is a really kind of underrated film. I remember when it came out, I saw a lot of people on Facebook that were really praising it. They were just saying, oh my God, you know, this film's great. It's kind of come out of nowhere. And it is a film that is available on that network, Netflix. You might have heard of it. It's not changed its name to X2 yet, like other platforms.
Right.
And you should definitely go and check it out. And the thing is, Onur, your career is incredible, and we can't even cover it all in one episode. We are going to have you back.
I'd love to be back, and I think the best idea is like I have like there's a stopwatch or something where I have like a minute and a half to speak, and when the beeper goes off, and I have to stop talking about it. You know,
no, you're not a rambler. You're passionate. There's a big difference. There's a big difference.
We have had some guests on in the past who have had extensive careers of like 30, 40 plus years, and we struggle to get conversation out of them for an hour. Yeah. Really, they are so kind of withdrawn. It's like, why the hell did you even come on?
And you're not a rambler. I've heard ramblers. No. That's not you.
You have a home on this show anytime that you want to drop by.
Well, there are definitely some shows. There's some shows I'm not welcome on. There's a show called Doug Benson. There's the Doug Benson show that I've been
the one you got picked off twice.
Yeah, twice on. Yeah. I'm not welcome on that show. Although one day I hope to do a third episode so that we can clear the air and clear the karma. But I don't know. Yeah,
just get kicked off in the first 5 minutes, and then
That's
you've got
right.
the trifecta.
That's right. Thank you. I appreciate it, Andrew and Jonas. Jonas, thank you both.
No, definitely. I think obviously, to kind of round out this episode today, we obviously have to quickly discuss Poundcake. It's got its premiere actually in London.
The international premiere, yeah, it's already had some screenings in America at some smaller festivals, and so this will be the biggest festival it's playing at. It'll be Fright Fest in London on August 25th. Yeah, at I think 8:50 or 9:15, I'm not sure, but it's on their website, August 25th. So I'm really excited about that. And then we're gonna have some screenings in New York coming up, and it's eventually keep trying to screen it in theaters as much as possible to resist streaming. Now, if someone makes us a real viable offer, we'll put it on streaming, but I'm not going to just I've given movies in the past to streaming services and that don't offer any money up front. And how could they really? It's hard to make money at this business. But they also just dump the movie on streaming and they don't promote it. So it's like, well, I could just do that myself. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, so it's like in the future, it's like I'm not going to go with a distributor unless they can give us some kind of like financial offer just so we can pay people back, because no one got paid making this except for some of the crew members. It was a small crew. So
unfortunately, I won't be able to be there on the 25th for the London. I will be in another country at the time. Otherwise, I would have so been there. But for, you get some more screenings in New York if you do it. I know Jonas is a local. He would love to come by, check your movie out. We can cover it here and really promote it for you. Try and get you.
That'd be great. Yeah, Jonas, I'll let you know. So it's going to be at the Roxy Cinema, like August 11th, 13th, and 15th. If you're around, you should definitely.
Oh yeah, I actually know the. I know the person that coordinates all the programming there.
Yeah, he's. I can't remember his name off the tip because I'm just having a brain fog. But he's so sweet. They've been really cool, generous to give us 3 screenings. I'm excited.
Yeah,
I love the Roxy.
The
Roxy's awesome.
Really,
really
absolutely.
Cool. Yeah.
August 11th. Yeah, if I'm in town August 11th, I'll absolutely be there because I would love.
Yeah.
To, I would love to see it.
And if anybody goes to YouTube and types in Poundcake trailer, you can see the trailer. It's just about a serial killer who kills straight white men, and nobody cares. Nobody gives a damn. And there's kind of like a Greek chorus of podcasters throughout the movie that kind of like, again, I'm very, very influenced by. I didn't say this, but like, there's the radio host in Applesauce, and I'm very influenced by talk radio, Oliver Stone's talk radio from the 80s that Eric Bogosian, of course, wrote and starred in. I love that movie. I love Fisher King from the 80s as well, which has got the Jeff Bridges host. This idea of the big mouth on the radio, just talking shit, getting in trouble, stirring things up. The rabble rouser, I'm drawn to that, and there's a lot of that in Poundcake, because all the straight white men are just props to be killed in brutal, terrible ways. And it's a metaphor for the culture we're living in right now. Obviously straight white men have caused all the problems, so they deserve to go down. And you can vocally criticize and shame and castigate and criticize straight white men so egregiously. And years from now, I think we'll look back and say, "What? This was a collective mania." Just the way I think that the war in Iraq, there was a collective hysteria or collective breakdown of societal norms or common sense. I think
we cannot wait to hear more about it. We cannot wait for its release, and we will cover that in the weeks leading up to it. We've had an amazing show, an amazing debut guest already. I know we're going to be looking forward to having you back on to share your wisdom and your unique filmmaking voice and how passionate you are and how it comes across. It's fantastic.
Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah. So before that, Jonas, we know you got some stuff to plug before we leave.
I do. I have the Traumedy Hour show. It's the 4th Thursday of every month. So we have that at the Tiny Cupboard in Bushwick, Brooklyn. Specifically, if you're into horror, you can also find me over on Another Goddamn Horror podcast, which is just Linktree, linktr.ee/AGHP666. And we talk all things horror on that show.
And as well as supporting that, we've got to say, please give us some support over here at Poddywood. And the way you can do that is to hit a subscribe on our YouTube channel, because it means everything to us, to you. It's not going to change your day much at all. Yeah. If you want to send us some money your way, you might as well do it through our Patreon page, which is where you can get early audio versions of these episodes early, plus exclusive content. You can find us on our official Facebook page. You can find us on, can we call it Twitter anymore?
Well, it's still technically it's Twitter, but...
It's Twitter. It's still Twitter on my phone. Also, if you're a bit more sophisticated in your online, you can find us on LinkedIn. As of next week, we will be back with Steve giving his 2 What's in the Box reviews, because just because he was getting out of 2 episodes a month does not mean he was getting out of only just seeing 2 movies a month. Now he has to watch 4 a month, 2 at a time, and come back and give us his everyman review on these classic films, because he is a cinema philistine who has not seen anything including Taxi Driver, because I actually had to introduce him to that. But, Onur Tukel, we're already looking forward to you coming back.
So much fun, Andrew. Jonas, thank you, guys. I can't wait to be back and honored to be here. Thank you.
Pleasure was ours.
So from now, I'll see you soon.